I will start by creating a new web project. And this will be running on Tomcat 8. And here I'll have this Sketch Server endpoint as server endpoint. And let me actually put it in this package. And the client endpoint will be this class Sketch App Client that will be in this package. And the Swing client application will be Swing Sketch App, and it will have a main method, and it will extend from JFrame. And I will annotate Sketch Server endpoint as a server endpoint that will be accessed with the project name / Sketch Server endpoint. And I'll do the same for Sketch App Client. Now in Sketch Server endpoint, I'll have this method handle open that will handle opening a new WebSocket session. So I'll import javax.websocket.session, and I'll annotate this method with the onOpen annotation. And I also need a method that would handle the closing of a WebSocket session. So I'll annotate it with the onClose annotation. And we will also need a method that would handle incoming messages. So this is the incoming string message, and it's coming from this user session, and I'll annotate this with the onMessage annotation. And for handling errors, I'll have this handle error method that's annotated with the onError annotation. And all what I will do here is do a print line statement. And let me copy these methods, and I'll go to Sketch App Client and basically have the same methods. And for handle error, let me actually do t.getMessage. And let's go back to the Sketch Server endpoint. So what I need to do here is to maintain a set of sketch users. So I'll have a set of sessions, and in handle open I'll add this session to the set of sessions, and I'll do the opposite in handle close. I'll remove this session from the set of sessions, and in handle message I'll send the incoming message to all the users other than the user that initiated the message. So I'll do a stream, and then I'll do a filter, and then I'll do for each. And inside this loop I'll send the message to all the users after filtering the user that sent the message. And this actually completes the server. So let's go to the Sketch App client. Now here let me first define a session. And let's change this to session. The onOpen, and do this dot session is equal to session. And here instead of handle close, let me have this close method that will be called from the Swing Sketch app when closing the window. So here I will do session.close and then system.exit. And since I set the session to be private, let me have a get method that would return it. And here I'll define this Swing Sketch app and initialize it in the constructor. So essentially the Swing Sketch app will be instantiating Sketch app client and passing it itself to that constructor, and I will keep track of it here. So let's go to Swing Sketch app, and for now let me just define this method, message sketch, that Sketch app client will be using to sketch incoming messages. So here in handle message, let's remove this and let's call this Sketch app message. And I'll use the Swing Sketch app to do message sketch using the incoming Sketch app message. So this is all the code that I need for the Sketch app client. So next let's go to Swing Sketch app. Now here I'll define a main panel and a sketch panel and a sketch control panel, and the color panel, and an erase button. So this is JFrame Swing Sketch app, the whole window, and then inside it we have a main panel, and inside the main panel we have this sketch panel, and then sketch control panel is both the erase button and the color panel. So this is the color panel and this is the erase button. So I'll need an initialize main panel method and an initialize sketch panel method, and also an initialize sketch control panel, and finally an initialize color panel. And I'll have a Swing Sketch App constructor, where I will call initialize main panel, and from initialize main panel I will initialize the sketch panel and the sketch control panel, and in initialize sketch control panel I will call initialize color panel. And from main I'll call the Swing Sketch App constructor, and in the constructor, after initializing the main panel, I'll go ahead and set the title and the size and the visibility, and this is the server path, so WS localhost 8080, and I have it hard coded here for the purpose of this tutorial. So this is the project name, and then sketch server endpoint is what we annotated the server endpoint. And let me define sketch app client over here, and I will instantiate it over here, passing it this. And now I'll do container provider dot get WebSocket container, and then connect to server, and I will pass it this sketch app client instance. So let's go to main and do a try catch and pick up the deployment exception, IO exception, and the URI syntax exception, and I'll just do print stack trace. And this is what we imported. And when closing the window, I need to call close on this on sketch app client. Need to call this method. So let's do this over here. Let's add a window listener. So here on window closing, I'll do sketch app client dot close. Now in initialize main panel, after initializing both sketch panel and sketch control panel, I'll go ahead and create a new JPanel instance. This would be the main panel, and set its layout to border layout, and then I'll add the sketch panel as border layout.center, and I'll add the sketch control panel as border layout.south, and then I'll go ahead and add the main panel to the actual JFrame instance. And let me also add this method, a point sketch method, and this is for local sketching. And I still want to define two methods, a choose color method and an erase method. Now JSON will be used to communicate between the client and the server, and I will be downloading it from here. And I'll go to web content, webinf, and the lib directory, and I will paste it over here. So javax.json, using this version of the jar. Now in initialize sketch panel, if the sketch panel is null, I'll go ahead and instantiate it, and I will add a mouse listener, I haven't coded the point sketch yet, but it will be throwing IO exception and encode exception. So when the mouse is clicked, I'll do point sketch, do e.getPoint from the mouse event. And I'll also do sketch panel dot add mouse motion listener, and finally, as part of initializing it, I'll set the background for this sketch panel. Now going to initialize the sketch control panel. So after initializing the color panel, I'll instantiate a JPanel as a sketch control panel, and a J button as the erase button. And when that button is clicked, the erase method will be called, and I will set the layout and the border. So the layout will be a box layout, and the border will be line border. And I'll add both the erase button and the color panel to this sketch control panel. And before continuing, let me go ahead and define a color and a previous color. The way the user will be able to choose the color is by using a JColor chooser. So we'll show a dialog, and I'll do color panel dot set background to the color. Now in initialize color panel, I'll check if it's null first, and if it is, I'll go ahead and instantiate a JPanel as the color panel, and when the mouse is clicked, I'll be calling choose color, and finally I'll do color is new color, color.black.get RGB, and the color panel.set background. Now for the erasing functionality, if this color is different than white, then we need to get into the erase mode. So I'll do sketch panel.set cursor, cursor.get predefined cursor, and I'll have the cursor to be text cursor when erasing. And previous color is this .color, then color is color.white, and I'll set the visibility for the color panel to be false, and then to set the text on the erase button to be sketch. Otherwise, if we are in erase mode and we need to go into a sketch mode, we'll do sketch panel.set cursor, cursor.get predefined cursor, and that would be the default cursor. And same thing, so color is this previous color, and color panel.set background this color, and set the visibility to be true on the color panel, and set the text on the erase button to be erase. Now going into point sketch, the size for normal sketching is 10, and for erasing it's 80. And pick up a sketch app message using JSON. So JSON.create object builder, and I'll add the x coordinate to be point.x, and the y coordinate to be point.y, and the size, if it is normal sketching or erasing, and the color, so do color.get RGB, and I'll call build method on it and do a toString. And I'll go ahead and pass that to the message sketch method to do the actual sketching. So message sketch is also gonna handle incoming messages to be sketched, and after sketching this message locally, I'll go ahead and send it to be sketched on other windows. So I'll do sketch app client.get session.get basic remote, and do a send text, sending it this JSON text. Now for message sketch, I'll pick up the JSON object. So let's suppose this is an incoming message. So I'll pick up the JSON object by doing JSON.create reader, and passing it a string reader. So new string reader, passing it the sketch app message, and then I'll do a read object. And I'll pick up the point and the color and the size from the JSON object, and to sketch it on the sketch panel, I'll pick up a graphics instance. So sketchpanel.get graphics, and do graphics.set color, and call the fill oval method that would do the actual sketching. So point x minus size and point y minus size and the size. Next, let's go ahead and test run it. So let me add and remove, and we need this one. And let's start it. Okay, let's try to run this Swing Sketch app. Okay, let's run another instance. And let's try to fix this. So org Apache, Julie, logging, and log factory. So right click and properties, and let's add external jars. So we need this one, Tomcat Julie. And let's go ahead and stop the server. Okay, it actually restarted. I have those two instances. I'm gonna close them, and I will start the server. And let's go ahead and run. So run as Java application. And one. Two. And here 3. And this guy can do the same thing.